Okay, so we have a game against Nigel Short.
Nigel Short, in that time, he was the rising star from the British chess. I mean, he was young enough, but already he played very well, and it was a very promising international master. Later on, he became a super grandmaster, probably the best after Miles in chess history from England. And right here, he tried to combine the ideas from Dutch defense and from Nimzowitsch by having immediately a very good form of this kind of variation by playing immediately f5 and later on to arrive in the normal position with bishop b7, knight f6, and so on. But he had an unpleasant surprise already by his move d5, which transposes the game in a normal position with a very small edge for white, who has better activity, and white pieces are better placed than his opponent. You know, small advantage, but we'll see everything will become very clear in the next 10, 15 moves, you see.
Okay.
Bishop b7, okay, we take in e6, he took in e6, queen takes d8 check. Now the advantage is small, as I told you, because he can't castle anymore, you know. This is the small, you know, the small edge. Okay, king takes, but without queens it's very difficult to win quickly for white, you know. White is a little bit better, but what to do? I mean, you have to demonstrate why you are better, you know, and if it's good enough, the position. So, okay, bishop g7, g2, bishop d6, castle, knight d7, b3, knight f6, bishop b2. Okay. So he played king e7, knight bd2, of course, bishop d5. It looks, you know, very good defensive position for black. You know, even if white is a little bit better, but it's very, very difficult to realize the advantage. It's a small advantage. So after bishop d5 activity, you know, rook e1, white prepares for later on the move e4. Here is still impossible, but later on will be possible and very strong, you know.
But e4 why? To open
the game, you'll see, you know. But to open the game, we have first to eliminate the bishop from d5, you know. So after rook e1, he comes, of course, with the rook in e8 very quickly, and now knight d4. Okay, now if he takes in g2, after king takes e2, g2, we have two threats, knight c6 check or e4. In both cases, clearly better for white. If we take the pawn in a7, is winning already, you know. So, of course, he plays here c5, the most active, you know. Knight c6 check. He takes in c6, of course. Bishop takes, and now rook c8. Well, the problem now is very clear. If you go back with the bishop, now we have two bishops. Yeah. But if we have time to come back, bishop g2 or knight c4 afterwards, it's clearly better for white. But in reality, we have no time, because after bishop g2, he plays immediately bishop e5, and the game is already even, you know. It's very little for white, anyway. So we have to play very quickly something, you know. So we take in d7. He takes in d7 with the king, forced, because if he took back with the knight, he loses the pawn from g7, and is already too much. And okay, right now, we had the possibility to trade a few pieces, and now e4 is possible, as you see, you know. And after e4, if he takes in e4, knight takes e4, very, very unpleasant for black, you know, very unpleasant pressure, even if he didn't lose something in meantime, but it's very unpleasant for black, you know. So instead, he tries to consolidate the position by playing bishop e7, but now the position is too open. White comes very quickly with all his pieces right now. So rook d1, the position was already lost for black here, you know. It's too dangerous tactically, you know. You'll see in the next few moves, black loses very quickly, you know, here by force.
Because of this long diagonal, or?
No, the idea is to give a check immediately in c4, and he almost loses a piece if we have time to give a check in c4. King c7, and we take the pawn in f5, and completely winning. Mm-hmm. So because of this, everything is forced. He has to try to defend the pawn from e6. And has to play rook e8, but you'll see it's too late now. The other rook in e8. Yeah, the other rook from h8 to e8.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now everything is forced. Check in c4, king c7, of course, now the only move. And now very important again, bishop, the move order, bishop takes f6, now has to take only with the pawn, because if he took with the bishop, knight d6 wins the exchange in one move. Knight d6, okay.
Yes.
Winning immediately, you know. So he has to take back with the pawn, and now takes in f5, he has to take in f5, of course, and now knight d3 wins a piece or wins the pawn from f5. If white has time to give a check in d5, wins a piece, at least a piece, you know. So if not, the only move is bishop d6, you know? And now he loses the pawn, and any endgame is completely winning for white. You know? Now the only move is bishop e5, of course, f4, bishop c3, again the only move. And now decisive rook e7 check. Why is decisive? He has to take, and after knight takes e5, again we attack the rook from c8, and we want to give check in d5, winning immediately, you know. So bishop d4 check, and now rook takes d4, and he resigned, because if he takes now in d4, knight takes c8, king takes c8, yeah, king f2, and then the endgame is hopeless for black, you know. King f3, g4, h4, and so on. King e4, completely winning. So he resigned. It's like a strategical lesson, you know, very simple if you look at this, but very logical, you know. Small advantage, bigger advantage, decisive advantage, you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very little.
Sounds
little by
simple,
little.
but
yeah, sounds very simple, but it's not so simple, you know.
Especially when you play with Nigel short.
Yes, and again, when you play a very strong opponent, of course. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Thank you, Mr. Gheorghiu.
Very good technique at this super level, you know, like this. As I told you, the tournament was exceptionally strong, and any game that you could win was very important, of course. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Short, later on, he became a very strong grandmaster, and in one moment he played a match for the candidates match against Kasparov, you know, for the title. He lost the match, but he could play against Kasparov. That means something. I mean, he was a very strong player, you know, later on.
Yeah.
A super grandmaster. Yeah.
Okay.